Welcome to the Missing Dots, where we connect the gaps in history that others choose to ignore. Today, we are performing a complete paradigm inversion on the siege and assassination of Uthman ibn Affan in 35 AH. For centuries, this event has been flattened into oversimplified caricatures. Either a saintly leader attacked by random hooligans, or a righteous revolution against a tyrant. But our forensic audit dismantles these emotional layers. We apply medical science to debunk the 40-day water deprivation myth, proving that total dehydration in the Hijazi heat is lethal within days, not weeks. We move beyond the polemics to reveal the administrative realpolitik of an empire in transition and clarify the true active role of Ali ibn Abi Talib and his sons, Hassan and Hussein, who physically guarded Uthman's door against the insurgents. It is time to stop the cartoonish narratives and face the cold, hard, fiscal, and legal realities that led to the original sin of Islamic political history. So it is really quiet out here in the courtyard today.
Yeah, it really is.
Just the wind and, a few people walking by after prayer.
It's peaceful.
It is. And I think it's a really good place to just sort of clear the mind. Because when we do a deep dive into the year 35 AH, there is just so much heavy emotional baggage that comes with it.
Oh, absolutely. Tons of it.
Right. So if you are listening to this with us right now, I really want you to just sit with us here and look at these events purely through the lens of forensic science, medicine, and just the harsh administrative reality of the time. Because before we can even talk about the violence of the siege, we really have to talk about the money.
Right, exactly. The money is always at the root of it.
Yeah.
I agree completely. Because when we look back at these events, the tragedy of it is so emotional that it just blinds us to the actual mechanics of how the state was functioning. I mean, if you look at the year 644 CE, the Caliphate had grown to a size that is honestly just difficult to picture.
How big are we talking at that point?
We are looking at a single government trying to control land from North Africa all the way to Khorasan in Central Asia. Yeah, it was massive. And it was a totally different world compared to those early smaller days in Medina.
Right.
Because the early conquest economy under Umar was built on rapid expansion, right? Just moving fast and distributing wealth as it came in. But under Uthman, that had to give way to a stabilized, permanent empire.
Oh, yeah, and that transition from a fast-moving conquest to a boring, settled government, that has to cause some friction.
A lot of friction.
So where was the actual breaking point with the finances? What snapped?
The biggest breaking point was definitely over the land, specifically what they called the Sawad lands.
The Sawad.
Yeah. And the Sawad was this incredibly fertile, lush agricultural region in Iraq, right between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. I mean, it was the breadbasket of the whole empire.
So it was generating a lot of tax revenue.
A massive amount of revenue.
Yeah.
And during Umar's time, these lands were basically held as a collective trust for the Muslims. The money from them went straight into the public treasury and paid for the stipends, the ADA, for the military veterans.
Okay, so the guys living in places like Kufa and Basra.
Exactly. The veterans who had settled in those new garrison towns.
So these soldiers essentially relied on that collective land revenue to just live. It was their primary income.
Yes, it was their entire livelihood. But Uthman, looking at the big picture, realized that running a massive permanent empire required a completely different economic model. So he started reallocating parts of the Sawad. He turned them into private land grants, which were called iqta.
Wait, private grants?
Yeah. He allowed individuals, mostly from the Quraysh tribe back in Mecca and Medina, to exchange their local properties for these super profitable estates in Iraq.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. The goal was rational on paper. He wanted to encourage agricultural development and pull that wealth back into the central treasury in Medina.
Right, but I can see how that would just instantly cause massive panic on the ground. I mean, if you're a veteran soldier living in Kufa, you literally bled to conquer that land. You rely on those stipends to feed your family. And then suddenly, a letter arrives from the capital saying, hey, this land is being privatized now, and by the way, your stipend is getting cut.
Yeah, you'd be furious.
You would feel completely betrayed by the central government. It's almost like, and tell me if this makes sense, it's like a grassroots startup company, right?
Okay.
And the founders suddenly bring in these slick corporate executives, and they start cutting the benefits of the original employees who built the place.
That is actually a really good way to look at it. The economic anxiety was just profound. You had this whole class of early military settlers who suddenly felt their status and their money just slipping away.
While the guys back in Medina are getting richer.
Right. And to manage this super volatile transition, Uthman makes a specific administrative choice that ends up being very controversial. He appoints his own Umayyad relatives to key posts.
Right, the nepotism accusation.
Exactly. He puts Marwan ibn al-Hakam as his main secretary in Medina, Abdullah ibn Sa'd in Egypt, and he keeps Muawiyah in Syria.
Yeah, and when I look at those appointments, I mean, it's hard not to push back a little bit. It sounds like blatant nepotism. If you're trying to build a fair state, why hand all the keys to your cousins instead of just rotating different leaders?
It looks bad from our modern perspective, for sure.
Okay.
But think about the reality of late antiquity. In political science, this is called the principal agent problem.
Okay, what does that mean in this context?
It simply means, how do I know my manager in a distant province is actually doing what I want when I can't even see him?
Right, because there are no phones.
Exactly. In the 7th century, if a tax revolt kicks off in Egypt, it takes 3 solid weeks for a guy on a horse to reach Medina to tell you about it.
Wow, 3 weeks.
And then another 3 weeks for Uthman's orders to get back to Egypt. That is a 6-week blind spot where anything could happen.
Oh, wow, so you are completely in the dark.
Totally in the dark. If your governor out there isn't bound to you by deep, absolute loyalty, like blood loyalty, they could just empty the treasury and declare independence before your horse courier even makes it across the Sinai Desert.
Okay, when you put it like that, the communication lag basically forces your hand. You can't just trust a random political ally when the stakes are literally the survival of the empire.
You really can't. And this wasn't some new corrupt idea. It was standard statecraft.
Yeah.
The Byzantines did it, the Sasanians did it. They all used family networks to keep distant provinces from breaking away.
Right.
And we should remember, Muawiyah was actually originally appointed to Syria by Umar, not Uthman.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, Uthman just kept him there because the guy was a highly competent administrator.
Yeah.
So from a purely state-building level, relying on family was a rational move to hold this fragile thing together.
Okay, so we have an empire acting rationally from an admin level, but simultaneously committing political suicide on the ground. Because to the veterans in Kufa, it just looks like the elites stealing their livelihoods.
Exactly.
But I mean, political anger in a province is one thing. How does a dispute over tax revenues in Iraq physically turn into a starving mob outside an 82-year-old man's front door in Medina? Like, how did they get there?
Well, it escalated because those provincial elites and the angry veterans started forming coalitions. They physically marched from Egypt, Kufa, and Basra all the way to Medina.
Just to protest.
Initially, yeah. They wanted to present their grievances right to the Caliph and demand he fire these governors. But the negotiations broke down. There were intercepted letters, accusations of broken promises.
Right. It gets messy.
Very messy.
Yeah.
And that political protest suddenly hardens into a physical siege of Uthman's actual home. Which brings us to, honestly, the most persistent historical myth of this entire event.
Yes. The 40 days?
The claim that the rebels deprived Uthman of all food and water for 40 consecutive days.
I am so glad we are doing a deep dive into this specifically, because that claim has always bothered me. Just thinking aloud here, if we think about the pure biology of it.
Right.
Medina, in the middle of the summer, hits temperatures of like 43 to 47 degrees Celsius.
The brutal heat.
And Uthman is 82 years old. How is it medically possible for a human being to survive 40 days without water in that environment?
It's not. It is medically impossible. If we look at modern physiology, we know exactly what the parameters of human survival are.
Right.
When a person is put through total water deprivation in a hyper-arid desert climate, your body just keeps losing fluid, even if you're sitting indoors completely in the shade.
Because you're still sweating.
Sweating, yeah, but also just respiration. Literally just breathing out air removes moisture from your body.
Okay, so what actually happens to the body in that specific state?
Your blood volume starts dropping significantly. And as it drops, your blood becomes incredibly thick and viscous. So your heart has to work overtime, just pumping as hard as it can to push this thick blood through your vessels.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. And eventually the heart just can't keep up. That leads to hypovolemic shock. Because the blood isn't circulating, your major organs, your kidneys, your liver, your brain, they stop getting oxygen.
Oh, wow.
And they begin to shut down. In the heat of the Hejaz, an elderly man going through total water deprivation would suffer lethal organ failure in 3 to 7 days, maximum.
Wait, so if the 40 days is just biologically impossible, where did that number even come from? What was the actual timeline?
Well, the number 40 is a super common motif in the region, right? Scripturally, it's always used to mean a period of severe trial or patience or a long fast.
Like 40 days and 40 nights?
Exactly. It's symbolic. What later historians did was they conflated two different things: food deprivation and total deprivation.
Ah.
A human can survive 40 days without food as long as they have water. But the reality of the siege was that it was phased. For the first few weeks, it was a porous blockade. The rebels were camped outside yelling, but food and water were still getting in.
So people could go in and out?
Yeah, family members were coming and going. The situation only truly escalated to a total water blockade in the final 3 to 5 days.
You know, subhanAllah, stripping away that 40-day myth actually makes the real history so much more profound to me. Because if he was subjected to a total water blockade for those final 3 to 5 days, it explains the brutal physical reality of how he died. By day 4, without water in a 45-degree summer, he would have been experiencing intense delirium.
Absolutely.
His muscles would have been profoundly weak. He would have been physically incapacitated. So when the assassins finally broke in, it was completely impossible for him to fight back. The human truth is just far more tragic than the exaggerated legend.
It really is. He wasn't sitting there calmly in perfect health just waiting for the end. He was suffering the absolute agonies of severe dehydration.
Right.
And understanding that physical vulnerability naturally brings up the next big question about the defense of Medina.
Yeah, because you have an 82-year-old leader dying of thirst in his own house. And Medina wasn't some empty village. It was filled with seasoned warriors. Guys who fought at Badr, at Uhud.
The veterans.
Yeah. Why didn't the people of Medina or senior figures like Ali just draw their swords and clear the courtyard? I mean, they easily could have.
They could have. But the reason they didn't is that Uthman explicitly forbade it.
He told them not to fight.
Yes. He issued a strict, legally binding command to the citizens of Medina. He ordered them, literally under his authority as Caliph, not to draw their swords on his behalf.
So he essentially ordered them to stand down, consciously choosing to sacrifice himself as like a firebreak against a civil war.
That is exactly what he did. It's the core of his decision. In Islamic jurisprudence, the command of the Caliph regarding public order is binding on the citizens.
Right.
Uthman prioritized the preservation of the state and the sanctity of the Prophet's city over his own life. He knew if the Medinan veterans attacked those thousands of rebels in the streets, it would just be a massive bloodbath.
A total massacre.
Yeah. He stated very clearly that he preferred his own martyrdom over being the leader who started an era of Muslims killing Muslims in the capital city.
That requires just a staggering level of restraint. But, you know, this non-resistance command brings up the role of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Because depending on what polemic you read, Ali is either portrayed as doing absolutely nothing, or he's secretly orchestrating the whole rebellion.
Right, the extremes.
What does the actual forensic history tell us about what Ali was doing?
The historical reality shows Ali acting as a frantic, desperate mediator. He was completely against the violent siege, and he was against the rebels demanding Uthman step down by force.
Okay.
We have very solid records showing Ali publicly defending Uthman's water rights. He was out there arguing with the rebels, telling them that even non-Muslim prisoners of war get water.
Right, it's a basic right.
Exactly. And Ali actually personally delivered water to Uthman's household during the siege. He physically confronted the rebel lines to get water through before they locked it down completely in those final days.
So he's actively trying to provide humanitarian relief and calm the mob down, but his hands are tied because Uthman legally ordered him not to start a war. How do you protect a man who has legally commanded you not to fight for him? That's impossible.
It is an impossible needle to thread. But Ali made this brilliant, highly symbolic move to protect Uthman without breaking the nonviolence command. He sent his own 2 sons, Hassan and Hussein, to physically stand guard at Uthman's front door.
Wow. That is incredible. He essentially placed a moral shield at the front door.
Exactly.
Because you're not attacking the rebels, but you're daring them to strike the Prophet's own grandsons to get inside.
It was a massive physical and psychological deterrent. And the historical record proves that this tactic actually worked at the main gate.
Really?
Yeah. Hassan was even wounded by rebel arrows while holding the line at the door. But the rebel coalition, despite how enraged they were, they realized they couldn't breach that front door without committing an absolute sacrilege.
Right, because killing the grandsons of the Prophet would instantly turn the entire Islamic world against them.
Overnight, so they couldn't go through the front.
Which completely explains how the actual assassination happened. Because if the front door is blocked by this moral shield, they have to find another way in.
Right. A rogue faction of the rebels bypassed the front gate entirely. They actually scaled the back walls of the neighboring houses, crept into Uthman's private quarters, and assassinated him while he was reading the Quran.
They climbed over a back wall to avoid the guards at the front. It is just devastating. And that specific moment of violence, I mean, it completely shatters the early community.
And breaks everything.
And it thrusts Ali into the Caliphate under the most chaotic circumstances you can imagine. But, if you're listening to this today and you're used to modern law enforcement, you might be thinking, well, murder is a murder. Ali's the new caliph now. Just arrest the guys who did it.
It sounds so simple to us today.
Right. So why was there such a massive delay in seeking qisas, the legal retribution?
Because pursuing qisas in that exact environment was practically and legally impossible.
Yeah.
Under Islamic jurisprudence, qisas is not some broad tool you can use for collective punishment.
So you can't just punish everyone who was there.
Right, you can't execute an entire army just because a murder happened in their camp. The law strictly requires identifying the specific individual or individuals who delivered the lethal strike. And you need clear evidence and reliable witnesses for that.
And in the absolute chaos of a violent home invasion, with guys climbing over back walls and a screaming mob outside, establishing that kind of precise forensic proof is just impossible.
It is completely impossible. And beyond the legal strictures, you have to look at the practical reality on the ground in Medina. These assassins weren't just a couple of criminals hiding in an alley somewhere.
Right.
They were deeply embedded within this massive rebel coalition of roughly 10,000 men.
10,000.
Yeah. And they basically held Medina hostage. It was an occupying army. If Ali had attempted to issue mass arrests on his very first day in office without a loyal, standing army of his own to enforce those warrants, it would have instantly triggered the exact civil war that Uthman had just died trying to prevent.
Right, because 7th century Medina did not have a centralized SWAT team.
No, they didn't.
Ali is basically staring down an armed camp. If he makes a sudden move on them, the whole city burns to the ground.
Exactly.
Did Uthman's own family understand this limitation? Did they get why Ali couldn't act immediately?
They actually did. Uthman's own biological sons, like Affan ibn Uthman, they recognized the sheer impossibility of the situation. They were there in Medina, and they did not go out pursuing private blood feuds or tribal vendettas in the streets.
They held back.
They did.
Yeah.
Because they understood that retribution is a function of the state. It's not a personal right to revenge. And at that moment, the state was completely fractured. Affan actually went on to serve in the state administration much later in his life, which shows he clearly prioritized institutional stability over just getting private vengeance.
That takes an incredible amount of discipline from a grieving family, but obviously the wider community could not agree on how to handle this delayed justice, and that delay became the wedge that ultimately split the empire, didn't it?
It really did. This total deadlock over what to do with Uthman's killers highlights these two clashing models of governance that emerged directly from the trauma of the assassination.
Okay, what were the two models?
On one side, you have the Banu Umayyah, which is the clan of Uthman and Muawiyah. Their reaction to the assassination was to demand intense institutional statecraft, administrative efficiency, and very strong centralized executive power.
Basically, they saw the caliph murder in his own home, and their immediate conclusion was the state is too weak.
Exactly. Their view was very pragmatic. If you do not have a strong, secure, and even ruthless centralized state, your leaders get slaughtered and chaos takes over.
Right.
They genuinely believed that holding a vast empire together required absolute authority, even if that meant relying on dynastic loyalty and delaying certain equitable ideals just to maintain order.
And then on the other side, you have the model represented by Ali and the al-Bayt.
Yes. Ali's model was a direct reaction to the financial corruptions and the inequalities that actually caused the rebellion in the first place.
The Sawad lands and the stipends.
Right. So his model prioritized fiscal egalitarianism, moral authority, and absolute judicial equity. Ali was intensely focused on distributing wealth equally and ensuring strict moral accountability across the board.
Even if it cost him political allies.
Exactly. He believed that if the state abandons its moral equity just for the sake of administrative survival, then the state isn't even worth saving anymore.
Looking at both of those models, it hits you that both sides are just reacting to the profound trauma of this siege.
Yeah.
The Umayyads believed that without a strong state, leaders die. The Al-Bayt believed that without moral equity, the whole society just rots from the inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Neither model is inherently malicious. They both represent deeply Islamic principles. They were literally just trying to solve the impossible problem of ruling this wildly diverse, rapidly expanding empire while processing a horrific tragedy.
And that is the ultimate tragedy of the year 35 AH. It wasn't some simple cartoon battle of pure good versus pure evil, which is how later polemics always try to frame it.
Right.
It was a severe structural crisis. You had two valid, yet entirely incompatible visions of statecraft colliding during a time of unprecedented transition.
It's incredibly humbling to look at it this way, because when you see how this tragic 3 to 5 day siege was later stretched into a 40-day myth by Umayyad and Abbasid chroniclers, you really see how history gets weaponized.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone wants to use the history.
Yeah. Later dynasties tried to legitimize their own rule, either by elevating Uthman to this impossible level of physical endurance, or by completely demonizing the opposition.
Right.
But if you listening take anything away from our deep dive today, it's this. When we strip away the medical impossibilities, the political spin, and all the emotional layers, we aren't left with cartoon villains or flawless angels. We are left with real human beings navigating the terrifying growing pains of a completely new civilization. We have to separate the theology from the historical facts to truly understand our past, and to appreciate the immense administrative and moral weights these people had to carry. To rebuild your mental peace and legacy today, give charity, sponsor a student, and plant a tree. May Allah Disparate grant us success. Don't forget to feet. Come on, let's go. Don't forget to follow this channel. The Missing Dots. Thank you.